We previously discussed how to select a workflow path. Once the workflow path is selected, we can proceed to connect the camera. To do this, click the Unconnected button located at the bottom of the interface. The software will then display the number of cameras that are connected to the system. Next, click the OK button. Following that, click the Play button. This will bring up the main interface. Here, you'll be presented with a 3D view. If this is your first time using the system, you'll notice the camera appears at the center of the view, overlapping with the axis coordinate system. This overlap occurs because the camera has not been calibrated yet. We lack the necessary calibration information at this point. The first step is to adjust the camera's position. After adjusting, proceed with the calibration. This ensures that our system functions properly. Initially, click on 3D view. Then, on the top left of the software, switch to 2D view. This allows you to see the output from camera number 1. In the frame, you'll observe numerous dots. Using the mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out. Notice the circles with a cross in the center. These are the markers identified by the camera, or potentially some noise in the field. To determine whether these are markers or just noise, right-click in the view, select Show Grayscale to view the actual image captured by the camera, and check the positions of the markers to confirm their nature. Once we've opened the grayscale image, we can make adjustments to the camera. In general, we need to make the camera see as much of our capture area as possible. Depending on our application, the way we adjust the camera will be different. Generally speaking, we can follow a principle. That is, we let the camera to find our shape calibration rod in the center of the field. We let our shape calibration rod in the lower center of the camera's frame. It's a simple and effective way, especially for field with a small number of cameras, such as 8 to 16 cameras. Our cameras can be set in this way to get a better capture effect. For example, for this camera, you can see it's camera number 1. We can adjust the angle of the camera. According to the grayscale, we can loosen the various handles on the head. To adjust the angle, for example, if I loosen the bottom handle, I can rotate the head from side to side. I can start by making the L-shaped calibration rod appears in the center of the camera frame. And then I can loosen this handle at the back, and then I can adjust the tripod head. This way, you can adjust the height of the head. How do we determine the angle of the camera is appropriate? The main thing is depending on we look at activity range of our subject in the field. If we need to capture something like an unmanned vehicle, it only moves on the ground for this kind of object. The angle of view of our camera doesn't need to be adjusted to high, because when you go this high, a large part of it is actually in the air, but the airborne part is not in our subject's range of motion. So we can adjust the angle of the camera so that the camera can see more of the area we need to capture. If we need to capture someone of a certain height, imagine they are standing in the middle of the field, right where the L-shaped calibration rod is placed. In that scenario, we would need to slightly raise the camera angle. Actually, placing a person in the field can help, as it allows you to check if they fully appear in the camera's frame. For larger fields, placing marker points around the area is advisable to better observe the camera's field of view. This assists in adjusting the camera angle. For instance, if the L-shaped calibration rod appears in the lower center of the frame, I will adjust the camera up and down, left and right. Once all adjustments are made, the next step is to fine-tune the aperture and focus. Looking at the center of the camera, you'll notice 2 rings with teeth. The front ring adjusts the focus, while the rear ring adjusts the aperture. To adjust these rings, first loosen the silver-colored screw on top of the optical camera. If it's tight, the rings cannot be adjusted. After loosening, observe as I adjust the aperture. The image darkens. At the smallest aperture setting, it becomes so dark that the markers are not visible. This is clearly not acceptable. When we adjust the aperture, usually we first adjust the aperture to the maximum. After adjusting the aperture to the maximum, we need to focus. We can use the mouse first, in the center of the field. This L-shaped rod on the marker point position. We use the mouse wheel to zoom in. After zooming in, we adjust the ring in front of the camera. You can see that when I twist this ring, the image will become blurred. I twist it in the opposite direction. It will gradually become clearer. But if I keep twisting it, the picture will get blurry again. When you can focus, that's when the picture becomes the sharpest. That's where it's in focus. We twist it back and forth repeatedly to find the perfect position. Now, we're a little over the top. Let's go back a bit. Now it's like this. The picture is basically as clear as it can be. Then we can reduce the size of the image. The last step, we're going to reduce the aperture again, because right now the aperture is very large. You can see in the center of the field, the L-shaped calibration rod is already generating noise, so we need to reduce the aperture even further. To what extent? To the point where we can capture the marker points in the field as much as possible. Let's say I turn the aperture down. I'll start with the smallest possible aperture. I can't see any of the markers. That's not right. I'll just adjust it up a little bit. You can see that now in the center of the field, the marker points on the L-shaped rod can be seen, but the marker points in the distance can't be seen. We can adjust the aperture larger. Now we can see the distant marker points are visible. The markers in the center of the field. You can see them too. However, you can see the marker points in the distance. They are still relatively blurry. We can adjust the aperture a little bit more and make it brighter. Now it's like this. The aperture is more suitable. So far, camera angle and aperture focus adjustment is complete. We can follow this procedure, adjusting all the cameras one by one. After all the cameras have been adjusted, we can proceed to the next calibration step, adjusting the camera angle and aperture. In general, we only need to do this the first time we deploy the cameras. It is not necessary to do it every time we use them. However, if every time we use them, we need to reinstall the cameras or rearrange the field area, or every time we use them, the cameras are set up differently. For example, today you're using them in a 5 by 5 meter area, and tomorrow you're using them in a 10 by 10 meter area. Then every time you use the cameras, you'll need to make angle and aperture adjustments. Other than that, as long as the cameras remain fixed in position, we only need to adjust them the first time we install the cameras. After that, we don't need to change them again.